we have just been given a frightening reminder that China is not just a dictatorship, it's actually a country run by gangsters, standover men, and their reach is getting longer. Just last week, Britain's Foreign Office warned a British MP and also human rights activists who've been criticising China, don't travel to some 50 countries that have extradition treaties with this dictatorship. China could ask those countries to arrest that MP or those activists and send them to China. It's extraordinary. And if you think China would not do that, well, last week showed it's capable of anything and doesn't even bother to hide it. 3 years ago, Canada arrested Meng Wanzhou. She's the rich daughter of the boss of Huawei, a Chinese telecommunications giant. And she was wanted by the US for alleged fraud, as Huawei allegedly subverted US sanctions and selling equipment to Iran, which happens to be a fascist terrorist regime that's illegally building a nuclear bomb, we suspect. Well, China's response to this? It arrested 2 Canadians in China, a businessman and a former diplomat, and falsely accused them of being spies and locked them up. Now, these Canadians were held in jail while Meng Wanzhou, she did it easy under house arrest in Canada. But last week, Canada and the US finally gave in. They came up with some legal funny business, an excuse to free Meng Wanzhou without a trial, not with her present at any rate, and she returned to China to a hero's welcome, choreographed by the Chinese dictatorship.
Here she is.
来到机舱门口，向欢迎的人群挥手致意。
Miss Meng Wanzhou waving her hand to the crowd.
她今天也是穿了一身红色的服装。
And in very beautiful red dress.
现场我们听到很多的人嘛在高声的欢呼，欢迎回家。
And also we can see the crowd is saying, "Welcome back home."
And Meng then gave the crowd that had clearly been rented by the regime a prepared speech thanking China's dictator for looking after all Chinese people.
General Secretary Xi is concerned about the safety of every Chinese citizen. He has also cared about me, which has moved me deeply.
And then China, having won, as a reward to Canada and the US, released its Canadian hostages who flew back to Canada without the flag-waving and nationalist spin. Joining me is Rowan Callick. He was a foreign correspondent in China and Hong Kong for a decade and is an industry fellow at Griffith University's Asia Institute. Rowan Callick, great to see you again. What does this grubby hostage politics tell you?
Yes, good to see you, Andrew. This is a pretty upsetting episode all round. Obviously, it's great for Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, who've after 3 years suffering terribly, got back to their families in Canada. And I dare say it's quite favourable for Meng Wanzhou, who's now out of the horrors of living in her 7-bedroom mansion, dining out in Vancouver, not able to travel more broadly. It's something that's being spun very successfully by Xi Jinping as I will look after Chinese people, bring them home. China has not released any information, so Chinese people are not aware of the 2 Michaels being released, even though they have actually been charged with spying on national secrets. One of them jailed for 11 years. Spavor's been jailed for 11 years. Kovrig, we don't know. Suddenly, that spying charge means nothing, and they've gone home. So it looks good internally for Xi Jinping. And, you know, as we just heard, Meng, when she arrived, she actually said, I was speechless the moment my feet touched Chinese soil, if only, frankly, you know, where there is a Chinese flag, there is a beacon of faith. If faith has a colour, it must be China red and so on. You know, And Xi Jinping is now banging on about common prosperity and the need for helping distribute wealth and so on. Here we have the heiress of one of China's richest fortunes being feted as a hero of the People's Republic of China, the Chinese Communist Party. And so it's all quite intriguing. And but there is a but, which is the rest of the world. We know, don't we?
That is the point I'm coming to. You are so correct, because we, Australia, we also have what seems to me to be hostages jailed in China, like in particular a friend of yours, journalist Cheng Lei. She's been jailed in China for a year now. Again, you know, oh, you're a spy, national security, etc., etc. Should we now assume from this case that she will not be released until our government also offers China some kind of deal, unless we give in on whatever it is that it wants from us now?
Yeah, I fear that you're right, Andrew, that there's something. We've been given these 14 grievances that we've got to unravel. We've got to apologise for these sins and correct them, or some of them. It's really quite hard to know just what will be enough for us to backtrack. We've heard from people inside Australia, you know, if only we would engage, if only we would work the back channels, if only emissaries would go, envoys would go from our Prime Minister, and it would be like the old days, like the Gough Whitlam, Zhou Enlai, Mao Zedong days. You know, this is a fantasy world. They don't know China, those people who are talking like this. They don't know contemporary China. They haven't paid attention, frankly. And
well, add Paul King to that list, mate. Add the former Labor Prime Minister who said, China's not a worry, you know, we're just making an enemy when none exists. But speaking of that, Rowan, can you tell me, I mentioned before that warning to that British diplomat who's been named in a Hong Kong court case and then been warned by Britain's Foreign Office, don't travel to any country with an extradition to China because you will not be safe. How safe are critics of China when they travel? And I don't just mean now to China, but to say to Vietnam, because there was another Canadian who was kidnapped from Vietnam, has now been served in jail in China for a decade or more, again, a democracy activist. Or if they travel to Russia or some country in Africa, how safe are critics of China?
I think people need to look very carefully at that list of countries that have passed extradition treaties. Our own country was within, a wafer thin thinness of doing it, but thank goodness some really valiant people in our parliament. The Labor MP Michael Danby was a leader of that group who opposed that idea, and we haven't got such a treaty. So people can feel like Ted Hui from Hong Kong can feel safe here, and he can speak his mind like all residents of Australia can and should. And so the lesson we've learned from this is a message that Beijing has got, that hostage diplomacy works for them. As you say, we have to watch out.
Absolutely.
There's a danger.
Absolutely.
There's a danger
to
foreigners. Yeah.
Rowan, you were quite right to say, good on the Canadians that they're free. But the problem is, any Canadian now, China has learned, you get them, Canada will do your will. So everyone else is now less safe. Rowan Kallick, thank you so much for your time. These are dark days. Thank you for your time.